Wakey, wakey, everybody! We've got a video to film. Oh, come on. I don't bite. I'm just a monkey. What's with the scoff, Harry?
I don't know. It's just... You want to film this whole 30-minute, however long you said response video, but like... Who cares to watch all of that?
Excuse me? No. You be quiet while I talk. As a friendly reminder, this is my company, so you...
Yeah, I get it. I know.
Keep the attitude, and you won't be keeping this job.
Got it. A CEO will obviously defend his company in situations like these. If you're truly as clean as you say you are, you should let people do the talking and put out the good word for you.
Okay, Harry. Since you want to stand tall and bold, let me do it my way. And if my way isn't working, you become the director. That sound better for you?
Kindergarten, the lowest possible grade level in schools that are the stepping stone to children's education. A kind of tutorial of some sorts on how to progress through school, which gets slightly more difficult with each passing grade. Sometimes there will still be bickering and anger, which leads to squabbles that are eventually resolved, much like high school fights or little kids throwing hands. I had to check my Google Classroom and see if I was still in kindergarten after watching two grown adults act like toddlers about a Lego game. You'd think I'd be exaggerating or exemplifying this, and I'm here to tell you, I wish I was. Hey everyone, Captain here. This isn't a video I'd normally do, but I thought it was absolutely funny as hell how we're still having some of the stupidest drama in the Big 26, man. And I decided I wanted to give my thoughts on it, because why not? Now, for those who don't know, this video is going to be talking about drama between two unemployed, forsaken no-lifers, much like moi, being TQI, a YouTuber with over 200k subs who focuses on more in-depth videos from a competitive perspective, and Craft, a YouTuber with over 20k subs who focuses on reviewing characters, games, etc., albeit mostly Forsaken, and how character could be better or worse, yada yada, etc., etc. Now, you may be thinking, what could a jester and a random gamer have beef with? Well, this video is going to go over how absurdly stupid two people can be when they don't listen to their own words. Now, to simply summarize what the hell I could possibly be talking about. Yeah, drama about someone making a video, then someone else doing it, then the other guy claps back, then the other guy claps back. That should sum it up for you. Because I don't want this video to be longer than a freaking hour, I won't go into detail on any unnecessary topics, like for example, TQI's small segment on Craft in his Slop Crisis video, or times where Craft tries to make random comments that we could give a damn about. So with that, I also do want to mention that just because I am a high-level Forsaken player, 100 level 100 in everyone, this, that, yada yada, does not mean I will shoot their points down simply because, like, oh, I'm better than you. I have more playtime, and I this and that. So you're actually wrong. Now, if I'm gonna give advice or criticism, it's gonna be because of how I've played how I know the character is, and not because I've played him and gotten into a level 100 plus. Anyways, I will point out things in fairness of both sides, to simply put it. And now, with that out of the way, let's start with the first video. TQI's video starts out with him stating that Craft's take on balancing is bad, and the video aims to help his channel out by giving constructive criticism. And obviously, that sounds very thoughtful. However, where is it? While the video has several good points, I think he forgot about the entire point of the video, which is to give criticism, constructive criticism at that. He also fails to actually give advice or thoughts on how he would do something and tell Craft where he could go for balancing. Now, I near need to watch the video for the second time since Kraft does so himself, but to summarize TQI's video, he gives valid points throughout the video without actually giving any advice or reasoning as to why. In other words, he forgot the entire point of the video. Now with that out of the way, let's move on to Kraft's video, TQI, a masterclass in cherry picking. Now, is he stretching this masterclass catchphrase a lot? I mean, it's his slogan now at this point, so. Anyways, let's get into the video.
Forsaken dramas can be a difficult situation for the parties involved, where depending on the subject of the drama can lead to a lot of back and forths, from petty issues to career-ending flaws. This video is about drama between two channels, how to fix it, and how to move on as better channels going forward.
He starts off by stating that the video is to cover a drama between TQI and himself. But there's just one thing. Since when was it drama? Last I checked, it was just an opinion video. Never was drama until you brought it up. So it sounds more like to me, you wanted to start an unnecessary debate for something that shouldn't have been drama in the first place. It's hard to really make a video on someone and claim it as drama when it clearly wasn't until you made this unnecessarily long video that could have been significantly shortened to like 10 to 15 minutes. But we'll get into that later.
Forward. Let's get into there's a time where rent-free becomes rent's due, and TQI's critique shows just how out of touch with the average Forsaken player he is, with a mindset tunnel-visioned on the most extreme what-if scenarios, and towards a format that should not be the standard for game balancing.
I also find it ironic that he says he's out of touch with the average Forsaken player when it's clear he himself doesn't even do the same either. He's just focusing on new players and not everyone else. But, I mean, hey, it's cool to focus on new players, but you also gotta remember there's casual, good, pro, and god players. And it's heavily exemplified in this video.
TQI resorted to punching down with the thinnest veil possible of a hit piece, trying to label it as, quote-unquote, constructive criticism, maliciously deconstructing a small sample of my content with levels of unprecedented cherry-picking not seen since Papo's ASIM video.
Funny how he thinks people want to go through all of his videos and take each one apart piece by piece. Call me a cherry picker too, man. I'm not gonna go watch every single video of yours when I only need to watch a couple. There's only a couple I gripe about. Like, for example, I'll be like, okay, I agree with you with the Nosferatu video. I don't agree with you with the guest video. Why would I take the Nosferatu video that I agree with and try to break that down when there's the video I don't agree with? Really, I don't really get the sense you're trying to make, Kraft. Anyways, and it's actually, on that note, it's actually even worse because of the fact that he gives zero reasoning as to why we should see the other videos. He just pointed out that TQI only picked 4 specific videos. I mean, gee, Kraft, is it really that hard to think, maybe he doesn't want to watch all my videos or doesn't need to watch all my videos? Is it really that hard to think, Kraft? This type of behavior will be repeated a lot by him, but we'll get into that soon.
The main hyperfixation towards inconsistency was my John Doe masterclass, including my meta video where I stated he became one of the best killers, obviously subject to change after the 1x rework, and my follow-up since the change that won me over, which I'm just gonna call the not masterclass. TQI argues that I'm inconsistent because my opinion changes. But opinions aren't meant to be locked in permanently once you make one. They can change for many reasons. In this case, it's because of the buffs John Doe received during that month, and not due to playing him a little more or having a string of good killer rounds.
Okay, but like, that still doesn't answer his question as to why none of the things you wanted to change for John Doe still makes him strong. I mean, yes, digital footprints, better X Factor now, this and that, but can you at least tell us like why that change irrelevates the points you had in the first place? That would be nice to know.
Videos. This is not something I should have to explain to a YouTuber with 200,000 subscribers.
Now, I was gonna deem this part irrelevant, but he constantly brings up TQI's 200k subscribers. Usually when that happens, it means they're trying to use it as some sort of excuse to make their arguments more sound. I understand when you get a bigger fan base, you do have to make an example out of what you say and do, but that doesn't mean it isn't the same for you. And you don't need to constantly bring it up over and over again. But you'll see later why it's kind of annoying.
So none of the problems Kraft had with John Doe were fixed between his video where he calls John Doe garbage and his video where he calls John Doe the best killer in the game.
He claims that the quote-unquote QOL changes in the patch don't fix the points brought up originally, and I didn't adequately explain how digital footprint became an X factor, and how John Doe became less honest. So, let's address something. Did the buffs John Doe receive specifically cover the pain points I listed? No. But did they greatly boost his viability across the board, regardless of skill level? Yeah. The point I'm trying to make is that this patch was a compromise. While I would have preferred fixing the fundamental issues in his kit, they were only suggestions.
I had to skip a lot of the John Doe segments just so I can get to this single part. And I have to ask, why didn't you just start with that? That literally is all you had to say. And if you want, you can just briefly sum up how this is an X factor, or these points aren't necessary anymore. But no, you try to bulletin point the fact that you're like, oh, but he's still like he still needs some like buffs here and there.
They were good changes, and I was happy for them. Some of the problems still exist, and I still listed said unfixed issues in my follow-up video. It's definitely not the main reason why I was happy, and I literally stated in the Not a Masterclass that it still needed changes.
We get it, but that still did not answer the question. Finally, you answer this question. We don't need an entire 3 to 5 minute segment of you saying, actually, John Doe is a better character because this and that. This is all you had to say, and then you could just add some extra detail. But that's all you had to say. This entire segment is mostly irrelevant since he's just going way too deep into something he doesn't need to. So we'll just skip this part and move on to the next segment.
Alright, you know the drill. Let's go through each of the points he makes in this section that I find issues with. Guest 1337 is the textbook example of a noob trap.
This is also just blatantly wrong. Guest is not a free character, meaning he's not intended to be used by players just starting the game. He's also rated a 4 out of 5 difficulty survivor. In other words, there is absolutely nothing about Guest that deceives new players into thinking he's easier to use or more overpowered than other survivors.
Wow, starting off strong, are we? Both of these things aren't quite true. 500 points is really cheap in Forsaken, and can be earned pretty quickly. And the 4-star difficulty tends to have a reverse effect. Noobs will see a harder survivor, and think that means they'll be better than other survivors if you get really good at them.
This is one of the worst parts of his entire video, where he horrifically tries to defend his argument by saying that Guest is a noob trap because noobs don't know how to read. I don't know, Kraft. You did pass kindergarten, right? Is it anyone's fault if a person chooses to simply look at all the stats and not actually read what it does? Or how stupid of an idea it is to see a higher rated difficulty where it's clear that the higher the star, the more difficult it is, and be like, oh, that's probably an S tier character right there. Like, it's difficult for a reason. It's Forsaken's fault for giving new players random stuff and saying, have fun, because they don't know how to teach players how to play their game. And for some reason, they don't want to show their players what a sentinel is. I'm just gonna skim the parts where when he talks about Guest in this video. He talks about it a lot, but how am I supposed to give him advice if I don't get it. How am I supposed to give him advice if there's no really anything to give advice about? Anyway,
Playing Guest, just being good doesn't cut it. This survivor arguably demands the most skill out of every survivor in the game, and is the hardest to play, owing to the fact he has to reliably react to killer M1s without falling for feints. If only 1% probably even less than 1% of all guest mains were super powerful survivor gods, and the other 99% die pretty easily, you can't just ignore the vast majority and point to a tiny minority of examples as representative of the survivor as a whole. The world doesn't revolve around you. I'm Glazer. Have you forgotten about Slasher, the killer that is entirely melee range? And what happens if my projectile ability is off cooldown? Am I just supposed to not approach 2-time and burn a bunch of time on the clock while I'm waiting? Completely out of touch and a disgrace to see on a channel with a whopping 200,000 subscribers.
Kraft makes fair points when it comes to 2-time, but he ruins it by trying to focus on TQI's fan base, which hurts his argument more as it seems more like envy or some need to poke at him just because he has more subs than you. Like, buddy, you can't be that jealous of his fan base, right? Try not to constantly point out something you don't need to return to next time. Alright, green prototype? I wish that was it, but he's not done with this. Anyway, moving on from 2-time, we have Elliot.
Enough said. In short, Guest 1337 is still really bad in the hands of most players, hence the memes of bad guests being far more prevalent than bad Shedletskis.
I'm just skipping the guest parts since it's just Kraft hating a character because a lot of people buy him and don't know how to use him regularly, and now he's just another Sentinel. And in Kraft's alternate reality, apparently it's not just another Sentinel, it's super terrible because people keep buying him. Oh, I wonder why. Maybe because Forsaken doesn't tell players how to play the game. I don't know. That could just be me.
But I'm saying it loudly, so you gotta believe me.
Do it with passion or don't do it at all, dude. I'd rather be myself when script writing and voicing than be yet another run-of-the-mill monotone AI TikTok voice.
No, you were doing it with passion? I thought you were just heated because Forsaken hates balancing their game. I never would have guessed you were actually going to just yell every time so people would stop doom scrolling like you're in a Discord call or something. My bad, bro. I did not know that.
Kraft's reason for this is that support-oriented survivors shouldn't have good self-defense tools. Interesting point to make, Kraft, but doesn't literally every other survivor in the game have access to self-defense tools?
I literally said that in the Elliot video, that while the other supports might have chase tools, they're not on command, and that's why they're fair in comparison to Rush Hour. And all three of them are very vulnerable to targeting, just like an Elliot would soda throw instead of Rush Hour. And I don't think you get to use public lobbies as proof of a bad Elliot rework when you literally said previously to judge characters by their performance in a lobby of good players.
You know what, Kraft? You make a good point. Let me take a crack at it. I personally think the rework is bad because it is either impossible for the killer to win if your teammate protects Elliot, or they die in 2 seconds because they can't literally escape or do anything. I personally think Rush Hour should be an eject button, speed 4 or 5 for like a second or 1.5 seconds, depending on what's more balanced, so you can do things like barely avoid a gashing wound or graze by John Doe placing a digital footprint to block you. Yes, the current Rush Hour is busted. The rework, in my opinion, is not fully thought out and just makes it harder to balance the game. Especially the compromise, because if you're low on stam and can't use the speed to the fullest, you're simply dead. And you're like, oh, well, that's the same thing for dive. Yeah, dive death balancing is much different, so that's why it's not as bad. And on that note, Rush Hour is technically just supposed to be you zooming to reach a player faster. But they don't know how to, they didn't realize that people would like use brain cells and be like, you know what, this would be a perfect get out of a chase free tool. Anyway, I think if you're just gonna try to balance Elliot, try to make sure he's a character that won't either break the game or be the Mario 30-second timer item. See, TQI, was that so hard?
Why is it terrible? Because it turns Guest into a monstrously broken survivor that killers will never be able to beat. So it shouldn't be difficult to understand why Guest should definitely not have access to a self-heal.
Okay, first off, second off, you neglect to mention that this would mostly benefit lower skill players. You know, the intended goal of the suggestion and the largest issue with Guest right now.
I'm mostly gonna skip this part because Kraft's points here are absolutely horrendous, as he, like I said, states that the buffs for guests are to help new players, maybe casual players, but everyone else just gets a free S tier character. And in numbers, especially in numbers, it will be much more busted than it would be, and better than it currently is. The entire part is completely pointless, since like he said, it focuses on noobs, so there's no need to waste your time with this banter. You're probably gonna ask me why I'm not giving advice. Again, like I said, it's because how am I supposed to give him advice if the reasoning craft hates guests is because people don't know how to read? That's essentially it. It's the player's fault, not the kid. So I can't give advice on something if it isn't even the kid's problem. But I do have to say something to Craft, and it's probably gonna stop getting mad at characters that is very popular to new players, and get mad at Forsaken for not properly teaching players how to play the game. But I already said that, didn't I?
So to summarize, he analyzes Cool Kid incorrectly, then somehow doesn't even come up with a working solution to a Cool Kid problem.
Tweaking walk speed override's cooldown to be a little higher is a very small nerf for good players who are smart enough to hold on to walk speed override until they need it, and the end lag reversion on crashing into a wall only makes starting chase with walk speed override by running into a wall near survivors slightly less effective, allowing Cool Kid to be properly nerfed without touching the rest of his balanced abilities and stats or ruining what makes walk speed override good.
I'm not gonna focus too much on Cool Kids since I think walk speed override is somewhat balanced. My personal gripe is how much distance the push gives, especially when on ramps, and how that could determine a chase win or loss. It also negates slowdown if you push them off the edge high enough to where they would have gotten slowness. I'd rather focus on that than on his end lag, but even then, I give it the same iframes as if you hit a survivor, so it wouldn't just get immediately shot by chance or being able to get stunned immediately when you're able to move. But that's what I do.
Because the fact is that if we're talking about professionalism here, forging your entire Forsaken identity on trolling and general toxicity to others, and then asking for it over typos is egregious and once again cherry picking.
Before I move on, he says that TQI's old content counts, like he didn't change the way his content is now, because apparently people can't change. Or at least that's what Craft is implying. I'm not gonna get philosophical over a Lego game. Unless it's Piggy. But if we're being honest, Craft, pointing it out is also cherry picking, I believe, since you're taking the fact that he used to do these types of videos to strengthen your point, where it's clearly irrelevant now. And also, I'd like to say, I'm not gonna watch every single video you make if I don't need to, and it's simply picking the ones that I want to make videos on. I know you need the views badly, but how about giving a better reason as to why I need to watch every single video, or at least a reason. I promise you, if you pick, for example, the NOS video or the Slasher video over like the other two videos and try to break down there, this point Craft is trying to make will not be different. I don't know why he's still trying to bring irrelevant topics into his argument like he's been doing this whole video. It hurts his side more and just deems your points unnecessary, since again, no one needs to watch your entire channel, buddy. The bills cannot be that high, my guy. Actually, you know what? I guess you could be right. There is a difference between rent-free and rent-due, isn't there, Craft?
Other than just saying, it's all bad, and then moving on. For example, here's my constructive criticism on your rant. If you want to farm someone for content, you should at least watch their videos closely. You have a community of 200,000 subscribers, so if you're going to do something like mention my thoughts on Unstoppable, and then completely ignore what I said in the Not a Masterclass video, where I said Unstoppable still needs a buff, or mention my guest buff and ignore the part where he could lose max health as compensation, you're doing both your community and the entire Forsaken community a disservice.
Here we go, yet again. Punching at his subscriber count like it matters. Forsaken community, sure. Subs, like really? We get it. He's got 200k subs and you have a 10th of that. I have significantly less than yours, but you don't see me complaining about how you could do better research in some cases yourself, and how you're dishonoring your 20k subs. Now am I?
Although, if you're not keen on doing all of that research, based on how much you've talked about being a guest main and showing that in your content, you could probably look to doing something positive for the community instead, like updating your Guest 1337 guide, or even making guides on other Forsaken characters. Like it or not, guest being a noob trap is a big issue, and if you don't like that, then you could help fix it by making a guide more suited towards beginners.
Again, Guest is not a noob trap. If you actually analyze him properly, you would realize that Guest is not flawed, he is simply misunderstood. I promise you, I just heard Kraft laughing his ass off in the distance. I'm sorry, Kraft. We know you hate Guest more than 1x hates Shaletsky. Make a 50-minute rant on how Guest is the worst survivor in the game. But be focused on all players instead of simply new players until the Forsaken devs they need to implement a tutorial? Surely it can't be that hard, can it?
This video isn't made to discourage constructive criticism. Far from it, actually. If the basis of TQI's video was about the state of balance and critiquing my how to fix suggestions with his own suggestions, if any, that's healthy. Balancing is a difficult realm to traverse in ASIMs and has been a point of contention for years, believe it or not, even before Forsaken. It also goes to show just how polarizing the two sides of the coin are when it comes to game balance. One of us is focused on only the highest tier and competitive mindset, while the other is focused on the moderate, the average experience of a good server as a whole.
So what this Tower Heroes reskin is trying to say is that he focuses mostly on new and casual players, you know, people who have 10 minutes to 2 days playtime, and completely ignore the good players, pro players, and god players. I know it can be confusing since Kraft doesn't even know who he's trying to advise anymore, but don't worry, that should get you up to speed.
I've literally told you guys, time and time again, if you have a different idea than mine in a video, post it in the comments. Blatantly attacking them isn't going to go anywhere, however. I personally don't think only balancing around Comp Saken is the best or healthiest for the game, and will stand by that. No need for inconsistent opinions there.
This is the worst part of the entire video. I don't know how you three thought this was okay, but this end part is what's known as speculation. This is always a very dangerous part of an argument, as it is not, at any proven point, confirmed or seen as a form of truth. Using something like blatantly attacking, when at best it's a video criticizing Kraft and showing holes in his video which could have been handled better, but TQI instead decides to kind of fumble it and just give his opinions on the videos. However, that is not attacking. Saying things like that will make your side a very dangerous path to walk on, as throwing words without valid reasoning, or at least following it up with which is evident, because shows that there was not much thought put into this and you simply felt this way. And no matter if it hurt your poor little feelings, you need to have a good reason or valid proof of pointing this out. Otherwise, it looks very bad on your side. Here's some advice, Kraft. If you want to do the exact thing you think TQI is doing, at least be smarter about it, or just don't. I don't know. It shouldn't be that hard to do some more digging at textbooks, can it?
And ultimately, TQI, this could have been a DM or something, bro.
Wow! That's very ironic, my friend. We did not need a pointless 33-minute video. That could have been a DM. A pattern I've seen with Kraft is that he has a hard time following his own advice, whether it is to fix critiques, handle words better, or doing the bare minimum of thinking before acting. If you wrote this in the script, was it really that hard to simply do just that? DM him? You're a smart guy with good cognition, but the bells on your hat distract you from hearing yourself and realizing you could literally just do what you think TQI should do instead of acting like a 5-year-old and making an entire response video that, like I said before, could have been summed up in like 10 to 15 minutes at best, since you clearly didn't want to make it easier on yourself. Also quite ironic talking about moving on when it's clear you didn't think of doing so at the time and could have handled things better. Now that we're done with the video that makes Nosferatu's Hunter's Feast look actually useful, let's move on to the next video, TQI's indirect response. TQI claims at the beginning of the video and in his description and pinned comments that this is not a response video to Craft. So if that's the case, why is there a good chunk segment for him? At most, this could have been a separate 5-minute video or even simply a short, but instead, he decided to nudge in Craft despite claiming it's not about him. So which is it? Is it about him or is it not? Anyways, let's get into the video.
As many of you know, Craft is a channel that I've criticized for flawed Forsaken analysis videos. And while I only criticized his game analysis, his reaction was full of unwarranted disrespect and outrage. Shortly after I had posted the Masterclass and Terrible Takes video, Craft decided that it would be a good idea to personally harass someone defending me in his Discord server. This person was just attempting to have a civil conversation about what I said in my video when staff members from Craft's team, like Flying Cat and Igneous, started accusing him of being paid by me. They go further by calling him deranged, among other insults, and Craft himself joins in with unnecessary toxicity.
This is going to be a very important detail to remember for later. Keep this in mind.
Craft's team eventually harassed him enough to leave the Discord server, and I only caught wind of this through an email. So Craft acts like he wants to be civil, positive, and constructive in his response video, but then personally harasses my viewers in his own Discord server? The email included some other odd screenshots that show head staff members like Flying Cat sending weird messages about bribing and corruption, and Craft getting aggressive over a response to a question he asked. So I joined Craft's Discord server on an alt account to investigate, and what I saw made my heart sink.
This will also be a very important detail to remember later. Keep this in mind too.
So if they're that active, why aren't they doing anything to moderate or discourage the extreme levels of toxicity being directed at me? Ignorance and negligence isn't even a valid excuse because Craft's team turned a part of my critique video into a sticker that members can use to mock me. The sticker itself is not a big deal, but it shows that Craft has no intention of being constructive or positive, and has done nothing but encourage disrespectful behavior aimed at me and my video. And all this toxicity is just the first thing I saw. After looking through the server just a little more, I found so much worse. For example, Craft, do you mind explaining why there's 15-year-olds in your Discord server talking about making out? Not just once either. Multiple times. Last time I checked, 15 is underage. So is 13, which is the minimum age you have to be to see these messages. So your staff will pounce on my viewer for trying to discuss my video, but they won't bat an eye when there's minors sending sexually charged messages and images?
Oh my gosh, guys, kissing is actually sexual content. I never knew that. I gotta tell my parents to stop doing it in front of me every day, I guess. All jokes aside, kissing is not anything sus. At most, it's like weird online stuff, but that's about it.
Or what about how you approved of letting a random person create an entire chat thread promoting a slanderous Google Doc about me, and letting them promote a Discord server about investigating me? This level of irresponsibility is inexcusable. Don't ever try to tell me to do my research, because your very own lack of research gave this dangerous individual a platform to spread extremely damaging lies. There's more I need to share about this I love cookies individual, so to summarize what I've said so far, Craft has done nothing but encourage toxicity, partake in harassment, and fail to act responsibly in his community. Now, I'd like to make it clear that the next section of this video isn't something Craft could have reasonably known.
This is the end of Craft's segment, and while there is a bit more at the end of the next section, it's not necessary to bring up. But before we move on, I have to ask, if this was not a Craft response video, why is Craft here? Again, if you wanted to introduce cookies through Craft, that's more understandable. But you didn't. You very clearly made some sort of response and wanted him to watch, which kind of contradicts the point you were trying to make, which is it's not about him, and yet it's about him. So you kind of contradicted yourself, didn't you? Now let's get along to the final video on Craft's channel. Don't worry, we're almost done. TQI, defamation, and deflection. Now, unlike the abysmal dog shit that was Craft's last video, this one has some very important details we'll get into soon, and was actually pretty well made. Give yourself a pat on the back, Garfield, Gazzo, and Craft Without the Creek.
Shortly after the release of my response video, I prepared myself for some form of contact from TQI regarding the videos, the drama, and our disagreements so we can talk about it. But the day after that, the next video in the two unemployed people arguing saga dropped, completely ignoring my response and heading straight to throwing out some pretty insidious claims. And look, I completely understand that the main issue of the video is regarding a problematic user and their false allegations, but starting off with me and my team, especially with the claims being made, I couldn't understand why you'd feel the need to include us in something so serious. You state that I Love Cookie's involvement doesn't really include us, yet still warp the narrative that we housed and seemingly blindly agreed with him. So I'd like to go over my experience with that guy further on, and start off much like you did, by bringing me up first. As is the standard, do not harass him over this. I do not condone it in the slightest. Harassment. One of the main points tossed around in the several minutes spent talking about my server is that me and the other two scriptwriters joined in with our community to harass and silence your fans. I'd like to put a stop to that narrative first. It was the fans that came to harass us. I'd like to point out that in your video, you don't censor the Discord invite to our server, even though you declare that you don't want anyone to go and harass us. It came off as malicious in practice to include it. I'd also like to point out that this harassment wasn't a thing after your Slop Crisis video, but only after your second targeted video. Of course, it's impossible to manage communities as large as these with the videos on both sides, and bad actors are inevitably going to blatantly ignore both of our disclaimers for no harassment. Because of this, I won't make a blanket statement like, it's all TQI's fault his fans are coming to our server, and instead, I just want everyone to keep all of this in mind when I discuss this next point. The user you portray in this scenario was a member of the server for a while before your video dropped, but the moment it did, he started getting argumentative. An example of what's not being shown is him constantly talking down and trying to rage bait anyone who disagrees with his defense of your claims. Since you've made it clear he was a fan, it should be acknowledged that he blatantly ignored your wishes of no harassment, especially in a server that's the community of the YouTuber you're trying to critique. You say we harassed and silenced this user, who you failed to censor in your second image, when he was the one saying things like this, clearly looking for a reaction. We didn't ban or mute him, instead making fun of him for his toxicity.
Okay, remember when I said we were gonna come back to this? Well, here we are. Craft, no matter how many people harass you, fighting fire with fire will just indulge in more fire. Strong enough to make Karami drool. No, go away. It's just an expression. Go away. There's no fire. No, go away. No, it's just an expression. Go away. Anyways, if you don't condone harassment, why are you indulging in it instead of dealing with it? You claim that you don't condone the actions of these people, yet you poke them with a stick anyways. Now that's not a good example to set if you're going to talk about not liking this kind of stuff. Me personally, I don't condone harassment, period. While there is a difference between joking and harassing, it should be obvious which is which. I personally do not want to go out of my way to talk bad about a person out of hatred, malice, anger, etc. If I do, most likely by accident, I will do what I can to make up for it. The point? Don't be the people you don't want on your server. Simple. I brought this up because that's the way I see it, and I personally think you shouldn't make fun of people if they start jabbing at you. I'd rather just mute, warn, ban, etc. But hey, clearly Craft's mature enough, right?
And giving him the orange eye roll. I don't know why you chose to use cropped screenshots of his messages to make it look like we sought him out to insult him. And let it be known, the orange eye roll is basically a joke roll. A minus 30% XP modifier only makes gaining level rolls a little slower. It's why whenever I bring up an idea on how to rework something, I ask people to post their own takes in the comments. But when users purposefully call members of the community deluded for agreeing with me and saying TQI was right about everything, you can't say you're just disagreeing. If we did mute or ban him, you'd consider it silencing other opinions. And when he left, we didn't follow him into other servers, or his DMs to keep attacking him. Now let's discuss the toxicity. Your video includes examples of community members mocking you and sometimes Melkora as a joke, as well as the sticker added making fun of not hitbox abuse. This isn't like a malicious takedown of your character. We make these ironic jokes because we find it humorous. I don't mind if other people make those jokes about me. A different Forsaken YouTuber has a sticker making fun of my "It's garbage" video on John Doe, and I think that's funny as hell.
Should be clear as day that you're just joking isn't going to cut it. You may be a jester, but we don't ask for one all the time. Kraft tries to justify his statement by saying that he is fine with other people making funny stickers or emojis on him because to him it's funny. But that's literally just the exact same thing as someone making a Mexican joke, and even if I was fine with it because I myself am Mexican, other fellow Mexicanos won't feel the same way. If TQI really didn't like it though, he can just tell you to take it down, and not doing so would be a bad on your part, but all he did was just point it out, nothing more. So there's nothing much you could do there. Kraft shouldn't be assuming that everyone is like him, and TQI, especially if he was in the server, could have just said please take it down or something. It's quite odd because TQI does mention that he had someone send the screens to him, but also that he was in the server. You can skip this part since it's not relevant. I'll put up a timestamp. It's just an idea of mine as to why TQI might not have been able to see those messages. Again, completely irrelevant, just something I wanted to talk about. You can skip this part. I recommend you do if you do not care about just theorizing. Anyway, a working theory in mind is that TQI joined the server after he was sent these pictures, but by the time he made it there, these messages got eaten up by the other members chatting, and I guess he didn't look deeper into it. But then again, he'd have to find where the chat is in the first place, and yada yada. And Kraft, it being his server, would have an easier time looking. Now, I actually didn't know this, since I'm not entirely sure how all the buttons in Discord work yet. But you can actually search up users' names in the servers and see their old messages. You learn something new every day. Anyways, the point I'm trying to make is that probably when he got the screens, the windows, to see the full story was gone, and someone new in a server wouldn't know where to find it immediately. Am I trying to defend any side with this? No, just giving a theory as to why this could make sense. But because it is simply a theory, not a fact, not confirmed, it should not be taken to heart and should not be a part of this argument. It's just something I just had in my mind. If people don't like this part that I need to take it out, I will remember that for next time. But it's just an idea in mind, give you something to think about.
And I really hate to be that guy, but the Venmo joke is kind of a reach. This felt extremely focused on making a mountain out of a molehill joke towards him, and trying to make it out that clowning on a guy and calling them deranged.
Again, from the perspective of someone who has not been in the server, this does seem quite bad for them, but also they can also be out of context, so both sides really have a fair point.
Moderation issues.
Actually, I agree with you on this one, TQI. When I started the Discraft server, we had our first batch of mods that could handle the number of members at the time. But with the numbers rapidly increasing, our initial team was struggling to deal with the moderation needs of a server that was now much larger, as no new mods were hired to keep up with server growth. While the team does in fact crack down on this type of behavior, including a mandatory log on all moderation actions and why, the sheer number of users and activity has far outstretched the availability of mods being able to deal with it during peak activity. I've been working with the mods to set up a new system to make moderation easier for both the moderators themselves, as well as for users to report any rule-breaking behavior from other members. We're also actively hiring more moderators with varied time zones for better coverage of server activity at all times of the day. I'm saying this early because TQI words it in a formal way that makes the situation sound a lot worse than it actually is, claiming that the mod team allows minors to speak sexually in the server. It's not. It's a bannable offense, as I have not and will never condone showing minors anything explicit. But I felt that it was important that I made it clear that just talking about kissing isn't the same thing as discussing sexual content.
The moderation issues segment is a big valid point of Kraft not having enough staff to deal with everything, which is understandable, but we don't need to delve more into it. just know this is one of the stronger points in the video that helps this BattleBricks cosplayer with why these people said these things. I'm also skipping the Cookie Star 15 segment because while it is also a valid point, they did not know who he truly was. Only TQI did. So TQI should have had some common sense and realized that maybe, just maybe, haters in someone else's server aren't always going to tell their staff and owner that they want to do malicious and terrible things. I don't know. What would I know?
This section I wanted to add because while TQI does make good points about Discraft's moderation that we need to fix, I've noticed a pattern of bad faith representations of me, my points, and my friends who help me scriptwrite, and even my community. Now that all sounds hyperbolic. It's just one opinion slop segment in a YouTube video, nothing serious. But after that though, TQI makes an entire video to misrepresent my arguments and then call it constructive criticism. It's not that you can't or don't make good points, but that it seems like you had some kind of vendetta against me before your video that sours your argument. Then, right before moving on talking about Cookie Star 15, you say that we allowed him to slander you in his own personal mod-approved thread, when we were just verifying the facts before properly discarding his thread. But all of these little things combined that paints a picture of some kind of personal agenda against me for some reason. Probably because of that opinion slop section where you didn't like my 2-time take.
I was gonna skip this maliciousness segment because like I said, it's still Craft making valid points and we don't need to delve that much into it. However, this part was the nail in Craft's coffin that made this entire segment needed to be covered and essentially just dug a deeper hole for himself. Firstly, this would have been much better in the other video when you mentioned blatant attacking, as it actually gave reasoning as to why you would feel this way. But the fact it was left out like that and it wasn't an idea till just now goes to show you could have had some sort of gripe you didn't like about TQI's video, or it's just some like anger, but which is a bad mindset to have when making an argument. But because it took this long for us to know why it felt like an attack, the other video is clearly an uncontrolled response to a pointless argument. Next time, lead with this when you're trying to make your statement instead of throwing stuff out there and expecting people to agree with you. It's quite ironic, yet again, how you mentioned TQI should look at what he does and back it up with reasonable evidence or arguments when this exact same video with zero difference besides it's on another channel is the same problem you had with the video. You see where I'm going with this?
Even though you put a disclaimer to not harass anyone mentioned, it should be sensible that if you tell your audience of 200,000 plus subscribers that someone isn't just annoying, they're actually bad people, at least a few of them will decide to ignore that warning. It's not something that can be totally solved, but it wouldn't be right to say you couldn't have taken a step back to consider what you're claiming before putting out a video. We spent a week making the TQI video because we wanted to make sure what we were saying was backed up with reasonable evidence first.
The fact that they spent a week on it and it was still completely and horribly produced makes it seem like it was rushed than well thought of. Even though the video we're watching is much better made and shorter, somehow that other video that was supposedly longer in editing, I would imagine, and scripting, was complete bullshit in a nutshell. Not even like a in a nutshell, like literally a peanut walnut nutshell. Put that video in, that's the entire video. Just a bunch of bullshit. At the end, he repeats the same problem still had. He dislikes what TQI did and proceeds to do the exact same thing. You see the pattern now?
How to fix. I'm not gonna try and be funny when talking about this. This situation is a lot bigger than it needs to be. You took a break from content creation due to drama and walked straight into another, and it felt like lessons unlearned. My honest suggestion? Continue to take a break. Take the time to reflect. This current round of drama has spawned entirely out of on-impulse reaction.
No, it clearly was not, because instead of making the DM, your idea, you decided to make the TQI video. And in that video is when you yourself turned it into drama. So if anyone is to blame for riling this up, it's you, Kraft. Maybe you need to take a break and take time to reflect. To make a quote that fits perfectly here, everyone assumes the path they've taken is the righteous one of two. If you know where it's from, you get a gold star. But anyways, just because you think you took a path, that does not mean it's good. The same goes for TQI. You can't assume you're right if you can't even give proper reasoning as to why you're right. Do that first before telling someone what they should do or what path they should take.
Trying to build a following by calling others out, this is in regards to slop content as a whole, even if I agree, and continuing that trend was inevitably going to cause this and entirely preventable. At the end of the day, I want this to stop. It was so easy to move on after the opinion slop section, even reaching out if it was that big of an issue. The situation for both sides has been twisted further by bad faith actors in both communities, and it feels like this is going to keep going on indefinitely at this point. As stated in my response video, this could have been left alone if it was just the section in Slop Crisis, but since TQI decided to dig the knife deeper, I've only acted in defense.
Stop the cap. Stop the cap right now. Stop the cap.
Acting in defense? Since when? It just sounds more like swinging here and there with frail arguments and thinking that was all fine. I'm not gonna go into too much detail. I just find it really stupid how he labeled this as him being defensive when it clearly isn't. I don't know where he's getting that from, but whatever.
If this whole thing started because of me making a video about him and his content, I completely understand where he's coming from. But no, he's been the aggressor since the start.
If he was the aggressor, why did you become the igniter? Starting a brawl for absolutely no reason, and instead of listening to your own advice, you decide to make it worse for yourself with hopefully saying for the last time the terrible, disgusting mess that was your TQI video, which made the whole circus go around. Instead of avoiding responsibility, try taking some yourself for once. See how that goes. Alright, that's essentially the video. So let's wrap this up, shall we? Overall, this drama began, quote-unquote, apparently with the small part of TQI's video on Kraft, to which he proceeded to make another right after. This is not drama, by the way, just so you guys know. This is simply critique that could have been more helpful than nitpicky, and no, I don't mean cherry picking. Afterwards, Kraft makes a video which labels it as drama, even though it was not until he brought it up. And essentially, and probably accidentally, becoming the initiator of the fight, whether you choose to believe it or not. This entire video is to explain what a bunch of Manchildren can do when they don't know how to use proper cognitive thinking they learn in their educational endeavors. And that's assuming the normal outcome of them passing high school. And instead of making proper sentence structure, this entire video was the videos were just pure BS in a pointless circle that no one asked any of you to make. Thankfully, there is a happy ending, as Kraft made a post saying that they had a stern talking to towards each other. Said, no, I don't like it when you're doing this to me. No, you better next time. And they made peace. And same with TQI, he made his own post. The situation is now resolved and both parties are moving on. But if that's the case, then why did I make this video? The answer is simple. This shouldn't have been a video in the first place. TQI wants understanding, so here it is. Just because someone has an idea of what they could do to balance a character does not mean you have to agree with it. And if you want to help, actually give it instead of pricking and pulling in detail about how you think he's wrong. Kraft wants balancing, so here it is. Listen to yourself. Don't make unnecessary, dangerous statements and make dramas, again, that you essentially started, without doing the bare minimum of following your own advice of not playing with fire. This entire situation could have been resolved in seconds if both parties just knew what they were doing and not thinking with their emotions rather than their brains. Yes, we all know human error exists and we know that we make mistakes, but this is more than mistakes. This is about you having the solution in your hand and not realizing it's there. I'm 17 and I'm telling probably 20 plus year olds how they should be adults. It's absurd that I even have to make a video of this. I don't have to, obviously, but I feel this could be insightful to people who might end up in a situation like this. What I will say is, don't be like these two and think before you act. At the end of the day, actually, let me say it. Don't be like these two. Think before you act. That is the key. At the end of the day, it's all good between them, so there's no need to further criticize this and leave it with the best case scenario, the drama God. That's about it. I'm gonna go grind for 3 infected vegetable girls now. See ya.
All these memories within my past have got me on my knees. Though I'm washed clean by the river, inside is my disease. As it eats away, leaves only pain. I hope you hear my plea.